The Algorithm of Us Part 1. The Notification. The layoff email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, nestled between a DoorDash promotional offer and a LinkedIn notification about someone Ellie Reynolds had met once at a conference 3 years ago, celebrating a work anniversary. She might have missed it entirely if she hadn't been mindlessly scrolling through her phone while waiting for her iced coffee at the neighborhood cafe. The subject line was innocuous enough. Important company update from leadership. The first paragraph thanked her for her contributions to DataSphere over the past 4 years. The second paragraph used phrases like strategic realignment and AI integration initiative. The third paragraph informed her that her position as a content strategist had been eliminated, effective immediately. Ellie stared at her phone, the bustling Chicago cafe suddenly feeling very far away. 4 years of her life, dismissed in 3 paragraphs. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for her coffee when the barista called her name. "You okay?" the barista asked, a 20-something with a geometric tattoo peeking out from under his rolled-up sleeve. "Yeah," Ellie said automatically. "Just work stuff." Outside, Lake Michigan stretched vast and blue against the autumn skyline. Ellie had always loved Chicago in October, the way the city balanced on the edge of seasons, not quite ready to surrender to winter but already nostalgic for summer. Now she felt similarly suspended between states of being, no longer employed but not yet whatever came next. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her roommate, Maya. "Did you see the email? Whole content team got axed. I'm in shock." Maya had worked, in the same department at DataSphere. They'd found their apartment together after bonding over being the only 2 people who brought actual notebooks to a digital strategy meeting. Ellie typed back, "Just saw it. Where are you? Want to meet up?" "Still at office. They're giving us 3 hours to clear out our stuff. HR, watching like we're criminals. Come get lunch after?" She agreed to meet Maya at their favorite ramen place at 2 o'clock. That gave her 2 hours to... What? Start updating her resume? Cry? Google, how to survive being replaced by AI? Instead, she found herself walking aimlessly along the lakeshore path, watching joggers and dog walkers and young mothers with strollers, people whose Tuesday afternoon existence continued unmarked by professional catastrophe. She wondered how many of them were also secretly unmoored, carrying private calamities beneath ordinary exteriors. The brisk October air felt good against her face. At 34, Ellie had already weathered a recession early in her career, the slow death of print journalism where she'd started, and the pandemic that had transformed workplace culture forever. She would survive this too. But that didn't answer the more immediate question. What now? Part 2. The Algorithm. The ramen restaurant was busy with the lunch crowd when Ellie arrived. Maya had already secured a small table near the back, her corporate ID badge conspicuously absent from around her neck for the first time in years. "I ordered you the spicy miso with extra mushrooms," Maya said, as Ellie slid into the seat across from her. "And sake. We're day drinking. It's mandatory." Maya looked surprisingly composed for someone who had just lost her job. Her dark curly hair was pulled back in its usual precise bun, her minimalist jumpsuit unwrinkled. Only the slight redness around her eyes betrayed any emotional turmoil. "How was the office?" Ellie asked. "Surreal. Half the floor cleared out. People crying in the bathroom. Chad from product management trying to poach the survivors for his team while pretending to console them." Maya poured sake into 2 small cups. The CEO sent a company-wide email about embracing the AI revolution, while we were literally packing our personal items into boxes. Ellie took a sip of sake, feeling the warm liquid burn slightly on its way down. Did they at least give details about severance? 3 months, plus they're keeping our health insurance through the end of the year. Maya pushed a thin folder across the table. HR gave us this whole packet about career transition resources. There's a link to some AI resume optimization tool, which feels like adding insult to injury. Their ramen arrived, steaming and fragrant. Ellie realized she was ravenous, having skipped breakfast that morning in her rush to get to the cafe to work on the content calendar that was now irrelevant. "So what happened exactly?" she asked between bites. "Was it really the AI thing, or is that corporate speak for, we need to cut costs?" Maya leaned forward, lowering her voice slightly despite the restaurant's ambient noise. "From what I gathered from Arjun in engineering before I left, they've been training this new content generation AI on all our work for the past year. Apparently, it's gotten good enough that management thinks they only need a few human editors to supervise it, rather than a full team of writers and strategists. They used our own work to train our replacements," Ellie said. The ramen suddenly tasted like nothing. "The algorithm of capitalism, baby." Maya raised her sake cup in a mock toast. Ellie's phone buzzed with a notification. She ignored it, but a minute later it buzzed again, and then a third time in quick succession. "Sorry," she said, finally checking the screen. "It's my sister. She's probably heard the news." But it wasn't her sister. It was a news alert. Breaking. Major tech layoffs. Hit multiple companies as AI integration accelerates. The headline was followed by a list of companies, Datasphere among them, citing a combined total of over 15,000 jobs eliminated nationwide on what social media was already calling AI Tuesday. Ellie showed the screen to Maya, whose composed facade finally cracked. 15,000 people, Maya whispered. Today alone. They finished their meal mostly in silence, the reality of their situation sinking in. They weren't just two women who'd lost their jobs at one company. They were part of a seismic shift happening across the entire economy. Outside the restaurant, they hugged tightly before heading in opposite directions. Maya to meet with her financial advisor, Ellie back to their apartment to begin the process of updating her resume, a task that now felt both urgent and potentially futile. As she walked, Ellie's phone continued to buzz with notifications. News updates about the layoffs, friends and family checking in, LinkedIn connections offering condolences and empty promises to keep an ear out for opportunities. Near the apartment, she passed a small bookstore she'd walked by hundreds of times but never entered. On impulse, she pushed open the door, welcomed by the musty sweet scent of paper and binding glue. Inside, the shop seemed impossibly larger than its narrow storefront suggested, with rows of bookshelves stretching back and up, accessible by rolling ladders. No screens, no notifications, no algorithms. Just the simple technology of bound pages that had survived centuries of innovation. "Looking for anything in particular?" asked a voice. An older man with wire-rimmed glasses and a cardigan stood behind a cluttered counter. "Just escaping," Ellie replied honestly. The man nodded as if this was a perfectly reasonable explanation. "Fiction is to your right, non-fiction to the left. Poetry's in the back corner. Take your time. We close at 8. Ellie wandered through the stacks, trailing her fingers along the spines of books. In the non-fiction section, a title caught her eye. Human in the Loop, Finding Purpose in an Automated World. She pulled it from the shelf and read the author bio. Doctor. Samuel Chen, former tech executive turned digital ethicist. She carried the book to a worn leather armchair tucked between shelves and began to read. 2 hours passed without her noticing, until the bookstore owner gently cleared his throat. "We're not closing yet," he said when she looked up, startled. "Just checking if you needed anything. Water, coffee. We have a small selection of teas as well." "Oh, no, thank you. But I think I'll buy this book." She stood, stretching slightly. "Excellent choice," the man said, leading her back to the counter. "Chen's perspective is quite refreshing. Have you been affected by today's news, if you don't mind my asking?" "Is it that obvious?" Ellie smiled ruefully. "Let's just say you're the 5th person today who's come in looking a bit shell-shocked and gravitated toward that particular section." He rang up her purchase. "I'm Walter, by the way. Walter Bradshaw. I own this little anachronism. Ellie Reynolds. And I wouldn't call it an anachronism. More like a sanctuary." Walter smiled, his eyes crinkling behind his glasses. "What did you do? Before today, I mean." "Content strategy for a tech company." She hesitated, though apparently now there's an algorithm that does it better. "I doubt that very much," Walter said, handing her the book in a paper bag stamped with the store's logo, an open book with wings. "Algorithms can analyze patterns, but they can't understand what truly resonates with the human heart. That's why bookstores still exist despite Amazon and e-readers." Something about his certainty was comforting. "I hope you're right. Time will tell." He gave her a kind smile. "Feel free to come back and use that reading nook anytime. It's what it's there for." As Ellie walked the final blocks to her apartment, she felt marginally better. The crushing anxiety remained, but alongside it was a tiny flicker of something else. Curiosity, perhaps, about what might come next. Part 3. The group. The next week passed in a blur of job applications, networking messages, and anxiety-induced insomnia. Ellie had leveraged every professional connection she could think of, but the responses were all variations on the same theme: hiring freezes, reduced budgets, and "we'll keep your resume on file." Meanwhile, her social media feeds were filled with posts from other laid-off content creators, some defiantly optimistic, excited for new opportunities, others brutally honest. Day 5 of unemployment. I've cycled through denial, anger, and bargaining, currently stuck on depression. On Friday evening, Ellie was sprawled on the living room couch, half-heartedly scrolling through job listings, while a reality show played unwatched on the TV. When Maya burst through the door with unusual energy. "Get dressed," Maya announced. "We're going out." Ellie looked down at her sweatpants and faded Northwestern t-shirt. "I'm not really in a going-out mood." "Too bad. It's not optional." Maya was already heading toward her bedroom to change. "We're meeting some people at Commonwealth at 8. That gives you 45 minutes to make yourself look like a functioning member of society." "What people?" Ellie called after her. "Other casualties of AI Tuesday. It's sort of a support group, but with cocktails instead of folding chairs in a church basement." The prospect of socializing with strangers was almost physically painful to contemplate, but Maya had been so supportive all week, making coffee every morning, forwarding job listings, even handling calls with their landlord about possibly breaking their lease if they needed to downsize, that Ellie couldn't bring herself to refuse. An hour later, they were seated at a large table in the back of Commonwealth, a gastropub with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling. 5 others were already there, nursing craft beers and sharing a large plate of truffle fries. Maya made the introductions. Zach, a UX designer from a streaming service. Kim and Deepa, both marketing managers from different e-commerce platforms. Luis, a data analyst from a financial technology startup. And Jessica, a project manager from a company Ellie hadn't heard of. "Welcome to the AI Displaced Persons Club," Luis said, raising his glass. "First rule of AIDP Club is you definitely talk about AIDP Club, preferably to anyone still employed who might be hiring." There was a ripple of laughter around the table, the slightly too loud kind that comes from people trying very hard to find humor in a difficult situation. As the evening progressed, Ellie found herself relaxing. There was something liberating about being among people who understood exactly what she was going through. The professional grief, the financial anxiety, the identity crisis of no longer being defined by a job title or company. "The thing that gets me," Deepa was saying, gesturing with a half-eaten mozzarella stick, "is that my entire team got cut while our CEO got a $20 million bonus last year specifically for driving AI innovation, which apparently means firing the humans who taught the AI everything it knows. My company just raised $100 million in funding," Jessica added. The press release went out the same day as the layoffs. They're framing it as the strategic restructuring to leverage artificial intelligence for growth. Translation: "We're firing people to make our balance sheet look better for investors," Kim said. "It's not even like the technology is that good," Zach chimed in. "Half the reason I was working 60-hour weeks was fixing all the mistakes the AI-assisted design tools kept making. But management just sees the cost savings." Ellie, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "Has anyone here actually found any promising leads yet? Job-wise, I mean." The silence that followed was answer enough. "I had a second interview with a startup last week," Luis said eventually. "But they're an AI company, so it felt a bit like applying to work for my own executioner." More uncomfortable laughter. "We need to adapt," Maya said, leaning forward. "Like it or not, AI is here to stay. The question is, how do we make ourselves valuable in ways the algorithms can't? By building better algorithms to replace ourselves more efficiently," Zach suggested with dark humor. "No," Maya said seriously. "By leaning into what makes us human: creativity, empathy, ethical judgment, the ability to build authentic connections." "That sounds great in theory," Kim said. "But try putting authentic human connection on your resume and see how many callbacks you get." The conversation continued in this vein for another hour, swinging between gallows humor, practical advice, and occasional moments of genuine insight. By the time they settled the bill, split 6 ways with careful attention to who had ordered what, nobody could afford financial generosity right now. Ellie felt a strange mix of emotions, still anxious about her future, but less alone in that anxiety. Outside the pub, they exchanged phone numbers and agreed to create a group chat to share job leads and moral support. "Same time next week?" Luis suggested. "I may be living on ramen by then, but I'll still spring for a beer." Walking home with Maya in the crisp night air, Ellie felt a shift in her perspective. The layoff still stung, but now it connected her to these other, smart, talented people. A shared experience that might lead to unexpected places. "Thanks for dragging me out," she told Maya. "Told you it would be good." Maya linked her arm through Ellie's. "Misery loves company, especially company that understands exactly which corporate buzzwords triggered your PTSD." Ellie laughed, then grew serious. "Do you think we will adapt? Find a way to stay relevant?" "I think we don't have a choice," Maya replied. "But if it helps, humans have been adapting to technological disruption since the first stone tools. We're pretty good at it when we put our minds to it." As they approached their building, Ellie remembered something. "Hey, there's this bookstore I discovered the other day. I think you'd like it. Want to check it out tomorrow?" A physical bookstore. How charmingly analog of you, Maya teased. "Sure, why not? It's not like either of us has to be at the office." Part 4. The project. The weekend passed, and then another week. Ellie continued her job search with diminishing returns. Each morning she would check her email hoping for interview requests, only to find automated rejection notices or nothing at all. The AIDP group chat provided some comfort. Louise had finally landed a contract position, and Jessica had a promising lead with a non-profit. But the overall job market remained bleak. On Wednesday afternoon, Ellie returned to Walter's bookstore, seeking the calm she'd found there before. This time she brought her laptop, settling into the reading nook with the vague intention of working on job applications. Instead, she found herself opening a blank document and writing about her experience. The shock of the layoff, the solidarity of the AIDP group, the uncertain future looming before her. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Walter approaching until he placed a cup of tea on the small table beside her. "Earl Grey," he said. "You look like you could use it." "Thank you," Ellie said, surprised by the gesture. "How much do I owe you?" "It's just a tea bag and hot water," Walter dismissed with a wave. "You've been writing for nearly 3 hours. I thought you might be thirsty." 3 hours? Ellie checked the time on her laptop with disbelief. "I had no idea." "You seemed very focused. May I ask what you're working on? Novel? Memoir?" "Neither," Ellie said, somewhat embarrassed. "Just processing, I guess. Writing has always helped me think." Walter nodded as if this made perfect sense. "The act of arranging words forces us to arrange our thoughts. It's why journaling is so therapeutic." He gestured to the chair opposite her. "May I?" "Of course," Ellie said, closing her laptop. "It's your bookstore." Walter settled into the chair with the comfortable ease of someone who had done so thousands of times before. "How is the job search progressing?" "It's not really," Ellie admitted. "There just aren't many positions available, especially for someone with my background. Content creation is one of the first things AI can simulate reasonably well." "Simulate, perhaps, but not replicate," Walter said. "AI can generate text that looks like human writing, but it lacks the authentic perspective that comes from lived experience." Ellie smiled wryly. "Try telling that to the companies cutting their content budgets." "Perhaps someone should." Walter adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. "Have you considered writing about this? Not just for yourself, but for others experiencing the same thing." "You mean like a blog or something?" "Or something," Walter agreed. "In my experience, the stories that need telling most urgently are the ones being lived right now, by ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances." Something clicked in Ellie's mind. "A collection of stories," she said slowly. "From people affected by the AI layoffs. Not just content creators, but everyone. Designers, analysts, project managers. The human cost of algorithmic efficiency." Walter smiled. "That sounds like a project with purpose." "But who would publish it? And would anyone care to read it?" "One question at a time," Walter said. "First, determine if it's worth doing. Then worry about who might see value in it." Ellie opened her laptop again, this time creating a new document with a tentative title. "The Human in the Loop: Stories from the AI Displacement." "Thank you," she told Walter, "for the tea and the nudge." "Sometimes we just need permission to pursue what we're already thinking about," Walter replied, standing. "I'll leave you to it. We close at 8. By closing time, Ellie had drafted an outline and a list of potential interviewees, starting with her AIDP group. Walking home, she felt a spark of energy she hadn't experienced since before the layoff. The familiar excitement of a new project taking shape in her mind. Maya was working on her laptop at the kitchen table when Ellie arrived home. "Where have you been all day?" Maya asked, glancing up. "You look different. Less doom and gloom." "I have an idea," Ellie said, dropping her bag and sitting across from Maya. "A project, and I want your help." She outlined her concept for a book of first-person accounts from workers displaced by AI, capturing this pivotal moment in the evolution of work from the perspective of those most directly affected. Think about it. We have this unique window where the technology is advanced enough to replace certain types of jobs, but not so advanced that the human impact is invisible. Ellie explained, her words tumbling out faster than she could organize them. There are thousands of stories out there right now. People like us trying to figure out what comes next. What if we documented this transition while it's happening? Maya studied her with a mixture of surprise and interest. "You're serious about this?" "I am," Ellie confirmed. "I know it's not a job with a steady paycheck, but I think it's important. And who knows? Maybe it could lead to something." "Like what?" "I don't know exactly. A book, obviously, if we can find a publisher. But also maybe consulting work helping companies manage AI transitions more humanely. Or a platform for connecting displaced workers with new opportunities that leverage their human skills." "Slow down," Maya said, but she was smiling, one step at a time. "Let's start with the stories and see where they lead." "So you'll help me?" Ellie asked. "Of course I will. It's more interesting than sending my resume into the void for the 100th time." Maya closed her laptop. "Besides, I've always wanted to be thanked in someone's acknowledgements page." "You'll get more than an acknowledgement. You'll be my co-author." "Deal," Maya said, extending her hand formally. As they shook on it, Ellie felt, for the first time since the layoff, that she was moving towards something rather than simply away from what she'd lost. Part 5. The Connection. The project progressed quickly over the next few weeks. Ellie and Maya developed a questionnaire and began conducting interviews, starting with their AIDP group and expanding outward through social media and professional networks. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people wanting to share their experiences, from fresh college graduates who couldn't get their careers started to near-retirement workers forced to reconsider their life plans. Walter allowed them to use the bookstore's back room for local interviews, and word began to spread about the AI Displacement Project, as people were calling it. A local public radio station did a short segment about their work, which led to even more responses. One particularly cold November morning, Ellie was at the bookstore early, preparing for an interview with a former automotive factory worker whose job had been automated away years earlier, a perspective she thought would provide valuable historical context for their project. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up, expecting her interviewee. Instead, a tall man in a charcoal overcoat entered, stamping his feet against the cold. He unwound a burgundy scarf from around his neck and approached the counter where Walter was organizing a stack of new arrivals. "I'm looking for Ellie Reynolds," the man said. "I was told I might find her here." Ellie stood from her table in the reading nook. "That's me." The man turned, and Ellie recognized him with a jolt. Dr. Samuel Chen, the author of the book she'd bought on her first visit to the bookstore. The one about finding purpose in an automated world. "Dr. Chen," she said, surprised. "How did you—" I heard the radio segment, he explained, extending his hand. And I was intrigued. I'm in Chicago for a conference, so I thought I'd stop by. I hope that's not too presumptuous. Not at all, Ellie assured him, still a bit starstruck. Your book was actually a big inspiration for this project. Please, have a seat. Chen settled into the chair across from her, placing a leather messenger bag on the floor beside him. Up close, he looked younger than his author photo suggested. Probably in his mid-40s, with subtle gray at his temples and laugh lines around his eyes. So, he said, tell me more about what you're doing here. Ellie explained the project in detail. The collection of first-person narratives, the focus on the human experience of technological displacement, the goal of documenting this transitional moment in economic history. Chen listened intently, nodding occasionally. And what do you hope to accomplish with these stories? He asked when she'd finished. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure yet, Ellie admitted. At minimum, I want to create a record of this experience from the perspective of the people living through it, not just the technologists and executives driving the change. Beyond that, she shrugged. I'm following where the project leads. The best research often works that way, Chen said with approval. You begin with a question, not an answer you're trying to prove. I wouldn't call what we're doing research exactly. We're not academics. Don't sell yourself short, Chen countered. You're gathering primary source material about a significant socioeconomic phenomenon as it unfolds. That's absolutely research, even if it's not happening within university walls. Walter appeared with 2 cups of tea, placing them on the table with a knowing smile before disappearing back behind the shelves. Thank you for coming, Ellie said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. But I'm still not clear on why you sought me out. Chen took a sip of his tea before answering. I'm working on a new book about the next phase of AI integration. Not the technical aspects, but the human systems that need to evolve alongside the technology. When I heard about your project, it struck me as exactly the kind of ground-level perspective that's missing from most of the conversation. Are you offering to help with our project? Ellie asked, trying to keep the excitement from her voice. I'm proposing a collaboration, Chen clarified. Your collected narratives could form a crucial chapter in my book, and I could offer resources, academic framework, and potentially publishing connections. Ellie's mind raced with possibilities. I'd need to discuss this with my co-author, Maya. Of course, Chen agreed. I don't expect an immediate decision. Here's my card. He handed her a simple business card with his contact information. I'm in Chicago until Friday. Perhaps the 3 of us could meet for dinner tomorrow to discuss the possibilities. I think that could be arranged, Ellie said, tucking the card carefully into her pocket. After Chen left, Ellie immediately texted Maya, who responded with a string of excited emojis and a confirmation that she was free for dinner the next evening. Walter emerged from the stacks, a knowing expression on his face. I take it that went well. You knew who he was, Ellie accused good-naturedly. That's why you brought tea for 2. Walter shrugged, not denying it. When Dr. Chen called asking if you might be here, I saw no reason to warn you. Some opportunities are best approached without time to overthink them. He wants to collaborate on his next book, Ellie told him, still processing the encounter. This could be huge for our project. Indeed, Walter agreed, though I suspect the true value may lie not in the collaboration itself, but in what it leads you to discover about your own work. Before Ellie could ask what he meant, the bell chimed again, announcing the arrival of her scheduled interviewee. The former factory worker, a man in his 60s with calloused hands and clear eyes, introduced himself as James Patterson. "No relation to the author," he joked as they shook hands. "Though I've got some stories that would curl his hair." As Ellie conducted the interview, learning about how automation had transformed manufacturing decades before AI began disrupting white-collar work, she found herself thinking about connections between past and present disruptions, between workers across industries and generations, between her own career derailment and the larger economic shifts it represented. Perhaps that was what Walter had meant. The value wasn't just in the potential boost to their project's visibility or publishability, but in the threads of insight and understanding that emerged when diverse experiences were woven together. By the time she finished the interview with James, Ellie had a clearer vision for what their project could become. Not just a collection of individual stories, but a map of the complex human terrain of technological change, a guide for navigating the shifting landscape of work in the age of AI. Part 6. The Pivot. The dinner with Dr. Chen exceeded all expectations. He arrived at the upscale Italian restaurant with not only a genuine interest in their project, but also practical ideas for expanding its scope and impact. By the time dessert arrived, they had outlined a formal collaboration. Chen would provide an academic framework and institutional resources through his position at MIT's Media Lab, while Ellie and Maya would continue gathering and shaping the first-hand narratives. "What I find most compelling about your approach," Chen told them, "is that you're not positioning this as a simple good versus evil narrative. The reality of technological displacement is far more nuanced than either the techno-utopians or the doomsayers would have us believe." "That's because we're living in that nuance," Maya replied. "None of the people we've interviewed are anti-technology Luddites. They understand progress is inevitable. They just want a say in how it unfolds, and a fair chance to adapt." "Exactly," Chen said, pointing his fork for emphasis. "And that's the conversation we need to be having at a national level. Not whether AI should exist, but how we integrate it into our economy and society in ways that preserve human dignity and opportunity." The collaboration with Chen opened doors that would have otherwise remained firmly shut. He connected them with his literary agent, who expressed immediate interest in their book concept. He arranged for Ellie to speak at a tech ethics panel at Northwestern University. Most significantly, he secured a small grant from the Media Lab to fund their research, allowing them to expand their interviews beyond Chicago and create a proper website to share preliminary findings. By January, 3 months after the layoffs, the project had evolved from a passion project into a legitimate, if modest, professional endeavor. Ellie and Maya converted their living room into a makeshift office with a large corkboard covered in interview notes, theme clusters, and chapter outlines. They were deep in discussion about how to structure the book's narrative when Ellie's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Is this Ellie Reynolds?" asked a woman's voice. "Speaking." "This is Vanessa Williams from Tech Future magazine. We're doing a feature on the human impact of AI integration for our March issue, and your name came up repeatedly in our research. Would you be interested in contributing a guest column?" Ellie muted the phone briefly to silently scream with excitement at Maya before composing herself. "I'd be very interested. What exactly are you looking for?" 1,000 words on your project and what you've learned so far about how workers are adapting to AI displacement. We can offer our standard freelance rate of $1.50 per word. After confirming details and deadlines, Ellie hung up and turned to Maya with wide eyes. That was Tech Future magazine. They want me to write a paid column about our project. That's amazing, Maya exclaimed. Vanessa Williams is like the tech journalism equivalent of Anna Wintour. This could really help build momentum for the book, Ellie said, already mentally outlining the column. And $1,500 isn't exactly chump change right now. Maya's phone pinged with a notification. She glanced at it, then let out a small gasp. Speaking of momentum, Luis just forwarded a job posting from his new company. They're looking for a human-AI integration specialist to help train their systems and ensure ethical implementation. She looked up at Ellie. It's basically exactly what we've been doing with this project, but as a full-time job with benefits. Ellie leaned over to read the posting. It described a role bridging technical AI development with human-centered design and ethical considerations, a position that wouldn't have existed 6 months ago. Are you going to apply? Ellie asked. Maya hesitated. I don't know. On one hand, steady income would be nice. On the other hand, she gestured to the project materials surrounding them. I'm really invested in what we're building here. Why not both? Ellie suggested. This job sounds like it would complement our work, not compete with it. And we could use an insider perspective from someone helping shape AI implementation from within. You wouldn't feel like I was abandoning the project? Absolutely not, Ellie assured her. Besides, we're documenting adaptation strategies, right? This is you adapting, finding a new niche that leverages your human skills alongside the technology, not in opposition to it. Maya nodded slowly. When you put it that way, I think I will apply. The worst they can say is no. They didn't say no. 2 weeks and 3 interviews later, Maya was offered the position at a salary 15% higher than what she'd made at DataSphere. The job would begin in March, giving her time to continue working on the book project through the crucial initial drafting phase. Meanwhile, Ellie's column for Tech Future led to speaking invitations at 3 different industry conferences. At the first one, a hiring manager from a healthcare technology company approached her afterward about consulting on their AI communication strategy. We're implementing machine learning to improve diagnostic efficiency, the woman explained. But we need someone who understands both the technology and the human elements to help our patients and practitioners adapt to the changes. By spring, both Ellie and Maya had found new professional identities that neither could have imagined the previous fall. They weren't just victims of technological displacement. They were now experts in navigating it, guides for others caught in the same transition. The book manuscript, now titled The Human Algorithm: Finding Our Place in an AI World, was taking final shape. Dr. Chen's agent had secured interest from 3 major publishers, with an auction scheduled for the summer. It's strange, Ellie said to Maya one evening, as they reviewed page proofs in their apartment, which no longer needed to be downsized. 6 months ago, we were devastated about losing our jobs to AI. Now we've built careers around helping others navigate the same transition. We pivoted, Maya said simply, like we've been telling everyone in our interviews to do. We found the gap between what AI can do and what humans need, and we positioned ourselves there. Ellie nodded, thinking about how differently things might have turned out if she hadn't wandered into Walter's bookstore that day. If Maya hadn't organized the AIDP group, if they hadn't started collecting stories that eventually connected them to Dr. Chen. Do you think we just got lucky? She asked. Maya considered this. Partly, maybe. But I also think we were paying attention in a way a lot of people aren't. Instead of just panicking about what we'd lost, we got curious about the bigger picture. That's not luck. That's a choice. A notification popped up on Ellie's laptop. Another interview request, this time from National Public Radio. The subject line read, "Fresh Air Interview Request, the Human Algorithm." "Speaking of the bigger picture," Ellie said, showing Maya the email, "I think it just got bigger." Part 7. The Adaptation. 1 year after AI Tuesday, Ellie stood backstage at a TED conference in San Francisco, waiting to deliver a talk titled, "The Human Role in an Algorithmic World." Through the monitor, she could see the audience of technologists, educators, policymakers, and business leaders filing into the auditorium. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Crush it!" Whole team watching live stream from office. Dr. Chen says his 80-year-old mother set an alarm to tune in. Ellie smiled, grateful for the support network that had grown around their work. The book had been published 3 months earlier to critical acclaim and surprising commercial success. Their research had expanded into an ongoing project at MIT's Media Lab, documenting and analyzing how workers across industries were adapting to AI integration. Maya was thriving in her role as human-AI integration specialist, recently promoted to lead a new department focused on ethical implementation. Ellie had established herself as a consultant and speaker, helping organizations navigate the human dimensions of technological change. They still shared the apartment in Chicago, though they both traveled frequently for work. The stage manager approached, adjusting Ellie's microphone pack. "5 minutes, Ms. Reynolds." Ellie nodded, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. Public speaking had become a regular part of her professional life, but a TED Talk represented a new level of visibility. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Walter. "Remember, they're just people looking for a good story. You have one to tell?" The simple encouragement steadied her. Walter had become a dear friend and informal advisor over the past year. The bookstore now featured a dedicated section on technology and society, which he jokingly referred to as the Ellie Reynolds Memorial Collection, though she was very much alive and frequently browsing its shelves when in Chicago. "We're ready for you, Ms. Reynolds," the stage manager said, motioning toward the stage. Ellie walked out to warm applause, the spotlight momentarily blinding as she took her position on the red circle at center stage. As her eyes adjusted, she could make out individual faces in the audience, curious, engaged, waiting to hear what she had to say. "1 year ago today," she began, "I received an email that changed my life. It informed me that my position as a content strategist had been eliminated as part of an AI integration initiative. In other words, an algorithm could now do my job more efficiently and cost-effectively than I could." She paused, looking directly at the audience. "I was devastated, not just because I'd lost my income and professional identity, but because I felt replaced, obsolete, a human rendered unnecessary by lines of code." She clicked to her first slide, showing a graph of job displacement figures across industries. "I wasn't alone. Thousands of workers received similar notices that day, now known as AI Tuesday in certain circles. Tens of thousands more have since joined their ranks as artificial intelligence continues to transform our economy at an unprecedented pace." Another slide, a word cloud generated from interviews with displaced workers. The initial emotions are what you might expect: shock, anger, fear, grief. But what happens next is where the story gets interesting. Because humans, it turns out, are remarkably adaptable when we have the right support systems and mindset. Over the next 15 minutes, Ellie shared key insights from their research: how workers were finding new niches between human and machine capabilities, how companies that approached AI integration collaboratively rather than adversarially showed better outcomes for both productivity and employee satisfaction. How educational institutions were beginning to redesign curricula around distinctly human skills like creative problem solving, ethical reasoning, and interpersonal communication. The most successful adaptations we observed shared 3 common elements, she explained, showing a simple triangular diagram. First, a clear-eyed assessment of what AI can and cannot do in a particular context. Second, identification of complementary human strengths. And third, perhaps most importantly, a willingness to evolve one's professional identity beyond traditional job titles and descriptions. She clicked to a slide showing portraits of various individuals they'd interviewed. The factory worker James, the UX designer Zach, a teacher, a radiologist, a legal assistant. These individuals didn't just find new jobs, they helped create new categories of work at the intersection of human and artificial intelligence. They became, in a very real sense, the human in the loop, the essential component that ensures technology serves human needs rather than the other way around. As she moved toward her conclusion, Ellie felt a surge of emotion that caught her by surprise. A year ago, I believed that an algorithm had taken my job. Today, I understand that what really happened was more complex. Yes, certain tasks I performed can now be automated. But the essence of what I brought to my work, my perspective, my judgment, my ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas, these remain uniquely human capabilities. She clicked to her final slide. A simple image of 2 hands, 1 human, and 1 robotic. Not in opposition, but working together on a shared task. The challenge before us is not how to compete with artificial intelligence, but how to collaborate with it. Not how to preserve jobs exactly as they've always been, but how to ensure that technological advancement expands human potential rather than diminishing it. This is not just a technical challenge. It's a social, political, and deeply personal one. She took a breath, looking out at the attentive faces. My own story is still unfolding, as is our collective adaptation to this new technological frontier. But what I've learned through interviewing hundreds of people navigating this transition is that our greatest asset isn't just our ability to learn new skills. It's our capacity to reimagine ourselves, to see change not just as disruption, but as an invitation to discover new aspects of our humanity. The applause began before she'd fully finished her closing line. As Ellie made her way backstage, she felt a profound sense of completion. Not of her work, which continued to evolve, but of the personal journey that had begun with that jarring email a year ago. Her phone was already filling with congratulatory messages, but one in particular caught her eye. A group text to the original AIDP club members. Just finished watching Ellie's TED Talk. Remember when we were all drowning our sorrows at Commonwealth? Who would have thought? It was followed by a string of responses celebrating how far they had each come. Zach was now leading a team developing more intuitive interfaces for AI systems. Kim had started her own business, helping small companies implement AI tools without losing their human touch. Luis had been promoted at his new company. Jessica was pursuing a master's degree in human-computer interaction. Later that evening at the conference reception, Ellie found herself approached by a woman in her early 20s with an earnest expression. "Ms. Reynolds, I just wanted to thank you for your talk. I'm graduating from college next month, and I've been terrified about entering the job market with all the AI disruption. Your perspective gives me hope that there's still a place for people like me." "What's your field of study?" Ellie asked. English literature, the young woman replied, looking slightly embarrassed. Not exactly the most AI-proof degree. Ellie smiled. On the contrary, the ability to analyze narrative, to understand subtext and cultural context, to communicate nuanced ideas. These are precisely the skills that complement rather than compete with artificial intelligence. Really? The relief in the young woman's voice was palpable. My parents think I should have studied computer science. Computer science is valuable, Ellie acknowledged. But so is your deep understanding of human stories and communication. The key is finding ways to apply those skills in evolving contexts. As she offered specific suggestions and encouragement, Ellie realized she was doing for this young woman what Walter, Dr. Chen, and so many others had done for her, creating a bridge between what was and what could be, between disruption and adaptation. Later in her hotel room, Ellie opened her laptop to find an email from a major tech company asking if she would consider joining their board as an advisor on ethical AI implementation and workforce transition. The irony wasn't lost on her, being recruited by the very industry that had displaced her a year ago, now valued precisely because of the insights she'd gained through that displacement. She thought about how to respond, weighing the opportunity against her current commitments and values. Whatever she decided, she knew it would be another step in an ongoing adaptation, not just to changing technology, but to her evolving understanding of her own purpose and potential. Outside her window, San Francisco's lights twinkled against the night sky, a constellation of human innovation stretching back to the first electric lamps and forward to whatever came next. Ellie felt both very small and somehow significant in that continuum, one human navigating the algorithmic world, helping others find their way alongside her.